Hello and welcome to World of Tanks with Dsann. In today's video I'll be taking a look at the Tier 8 Premium Heavy Tanks and making a sort of buyer's guide to help those of you planning on buying one make a more informed decision based on your playstyle and how the tanks work. So to do this I will be using the pros and cons on each vehicle to, well, I wouldn't say compare them so much to each other as to other tanks of the same type and tier, just so you guys have a more accurate picture of what you're buying before spending all that money on a tank. So without further ado, and in no particular order, let's go through the list. So first up, I think we'll take a look at the tanks I already own because I know how to drive them best. And the first one I chose to look at is the FCM 50T or 50 ton, the French Tier 8 Premium Heavy. So this tank has 1500 hit points, weighs in at a cool 55 tons, and has a 1000 horsepower engine. Coupled with its 51 km/h speed limit and 40-degree traverse, this thing handles more like a medium than a heavy in regards to speed and agility, and in fact most of the stats reflect on the fact that it is basically an oversized medium. Now we'll point out this tank is absolutely massive here compared to, well, let's say an IS-3, which is a common Tier 8 heavy. As you can tell, it is huge. The problem is it will not have the same camo benefits as a medium would, so it is relegated to a slightly different playstyle than like most mediums, so just bear that in mind. Now its armor is, well, it's on paper it's decent. It's 120, 80, 80 on the hull and 120, 80, 60 on the turret, so it's not bad armor, but in my experience it doesn't bounce or protect very often. I mean, you do get the occasional bounce off here, and well angled this does bounce quite a bit, but the side armor is paper thin basically and can be penetrated from almost any angle. The track does save a bit of shots, I will point that out because of its size and shape, but basically this is a tank where you want to rely on speed, maneuverability and stealth where you can, not that that's very easy with this camo, to try and ambush and surprise your opponents, use your speed to flank or get around them, to use this wonderful 90mm gun. Now, I like this gun. Most people would say it's way too weak alpha, and 240 alpha damage is not very high. It's definitely medium tank territory in that regard. But to make up for it, does have a rate of fire of 8 rounds per minute, which is by far the fastest of any of the Tier 8 premiums. Its penetration of 212 is alright. It's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst on our list. And the .36 accuracy is, again, not the best, not the worst. It's kind of in the middle. Aim time is the best at 2.3 seconds, and that's surprisingly good. So this tank, again, suits very well for either sniping at relatively long distance or hit and run, move, pop around a corner at speed, stop for a second, shoot and move on. Try and always get people unaware or just at long range. And to support your long range fire, it does have really good view range at 400 meters. And a decent signal range of 750. So just to sum up really quick, armor, basically useless. Speed and maneuverability on par with a medium tank, by far the fastest tank in our list. So if you like medium tanks, this is certainly the tank for you. Gun, low alpha damage, decent average penetration, good rate of fire, decent accuracy, again good aim time, so all around a very fun gun in my opinion, although you do have to be shooting more to get more damage done, I suppose. More bang for your buck. So just before I move on, this tank has AP, APCR, and heat. High explosive ammo, not heat. I wish this thing had heat. So next tank I think we'll look at is the WoT. Next up is the very big, very German, very heavy WoT, weighing in at a whopping 90 tons and having 1650 hit points. This is the biggest and probably the toughest of the Tier 8 premiums in raw HP and tonnage. It is a super heavy tank in every sense of the word. It is probably one of the few tanks that is massive compared to bigger than the FCM. This of course has a drawback. It only has an 800 horsepower engine with a 35 km/h speed limit and 24 degrees of traverse. Reading, I can't do it anymore. Anyway, this thing is big and slow. It has good armor for its size and tier and all that, but It's still a big, slow, heavy tank. It's probably better suited for the second line support, much like many of the British tanks do. And this gun really complements that. It is ridiculously accurate, a .33 accuracy, one of the, well, it's by far the best one on our list. Aim time is the second best, but still 2.9 seconds is not a very good aim time. It does have 234 penetration, which is, well, one of the better penetrations on our list. It's very close to the top. Average damage, it's pretty average actually. It's very German in that regard. It's 320 damage, isn't much, but isn't little either. It's not as weak as the FCMs, but it's not as punchy as some of the others. It does have a 5 rounds per minute, so it's not a slow firing gun really. It's, again, middle ground in that regard too, I guess. So both damage and rate of fire are kind of in the middle. This thing, much like the FCM, gets AP and APCR and heat. High explosive, not heat. There's only one tank that gets heat. My bad. Now, I will point out one weakness with the armor, and that is this area here, which is the typical lower glacis weak spot that Germans have, and Germans are notorious for. But like many German tanks, this thing also has a very notorious problem with this weak spot, is the transmission, where the gearbox is located behind here. And a hit to that is very likely to cause a fire in the tank. So I would always recommend having a fire extinguisher. This is one of the few tanks I would say if you don't have one, you're an idiot to be playing. Now, it's got decent view range, well, very good view range actually at 400 meters, and the signal range is a little bit lower than the FCM. So to sum the WoT up, it's a big, slow, heavy armored tank with a great gun mount, good turret armor, good hull armor that's bouncy as all hell. It can side scrape like a beast, but of course it's slow. It does have this weak spot, so if you can't hide this, you're gonna have a bad time basically. If you can side scrape so that they only see this, you're really hard to kill though, so there is that. The gun is average. It's the best description I have of it. It's average. It's got good penetration though, so. And this, like one of the other tanks, does not get premium matchmaking, so this will see tier 10s like an average tier 8. And in fact, this does seem like more of a typical tier 8 heavy than some of the others. This one will set you back 12,500 gold, and is the most expensive of the tier 8 premium heavies. So next up on the list is the T-34 American. And here we see the T-34 American tier 8 premium heavy tank. This one's a bit weird, and I'll get to that in a minute. But first, 1,500 hit points, same as the FCM, average for tier 8. Weighs 65 tons, so it's a heavy tank. It is heavy. Not playing on the words there. It has an 810 horsepower engine, so it's a big, slow tank again, like the WoT. It's not fast. And with 35 km/h speed limit, 22-degree traverse, it will reach that eventually, but like the WoT, it's probably more comfortable in the 20s speed-wise. Now, the armor is interesting. Now, you can see the hull armor is only 102, 76, and 51. So, the hull armor is garbage. Basically, a light tank, like a tier 4 could probably penetrate the rear of this thing. The turret, on the other hand, which is the main feature of American heavies, is ridiculously good, well armored. 279 millimeters in the front. This does not include the mantlet, which is another, well, God knows how many millimeters that thing is. I think it's closer to 400 millimeters with the mantlet included. Side is 127 and rear is 203, which means this thing is actually easier to kill from the side than from the rear, surprisingly. Now, the turret isn't without its flaws. It does have a weak spot up here in this big hatch up on the top here. And as you can see, it's quite a visible target. So, the gun on this thing, though, is probably the best. This, like many of the other, unlike the other stats, is probably a holdover from its tier 9 heritage. It used to be a tier 9 heavy tank until they changed the tech tree ages ago. I don't remember what patch. But this has the 120 millimeter, similar to the one found on the T-30 tank destroyer. I almost said heavy tank because to me it's still a heavy tank. So if we look at the T-30's 120 millimeter, we see same penetration, same damage, but the T-30 has a higher rate of fire, lower accuracy, and lower aim time. This has abysmal aim time. it takes forever to aim. It's pretty good at dispersion. It's not that big of a reticule, but it takes forever to get to its full size, and at 4 rounds per minute, you're talking a good 15-second reload before, you know, cruise skills and whatnot. So yeah, there's that. Again, AP, APCR, and high explosive, and this tank will set you back 12,000 gold. So this one is pretty much in the middle of all the tier 8 premiums. It is not the cheapest, nor is it most expensive. It's right in the middle. So to sum up, good punchy gun, low rate of fire, terrible aim time, and okay accuracy. So it's kind of hard to work. It takes a while to get used to. This is probably my least favorite of them all. Or the ones I have driven, I should say. Hull armor, garbage, except for in very few cases. Turret armor, fantastic, although not perfect. It has its weak spots. So, bear that in mind. And then I think we're going to move on to the next two, which I will be comparing at the same time because they are very similar. You'll see in a minute. So up next, since I don't have them in my garage, I haven't driven them, so I can't give that much feedback on them. I'll just do them together because they are very similar in many ways. So the IS-6 and the 112. I'll do the IS-6 first, and then I'll compare with the 112 because, as I said, they are very comparable. The IS-6 has 1,550 hit points, so a little bit more than the T-34 and the FCM, but I mean, this is not that much. It's really not much. 50 HP is not a lot. It weighs 51.5 tons with 700 horsepower engine, 35 km/h speed limit, and a 26-degree traverse. It will go that speed limit, and that's pretty much it. It's not as mobile as the FCM, but it's certainly not as slow as the others. It is average, and well, it's the middle ground in that regard. And the 112 is pretty much the same kind of stats speed-wise. It's got a higher speed limit, but a lower horsepower engine. So they're pretty comparable in that regard. Hull armor on the IS-6 is 100, 160, and turret is 150, 150, 100. So turret is a little bit weaker than your average tier 8 heavy, well, any Russian heavy on the IS series. Well, IS-3 and up anyway. They usually have more turret armor, but still is really good considering the shape is so rounded and whatnot. Now, it has a 350 meter view range and a 440 meter signal range, so this has the shortest range of all of them visibility-wise. This is a brawler. Now, the armor is only 100, but like the Love and the, unlike the FCM and the T-34, it is really good even though it has less because of the angles. This thing put at a good angle is really hard to kill. That said, it does have a flaw in the weak spots, is a giant driver's hatch. There is that. But the biggest drawback, in my opinion, on this tank is the gun. Oops, and I had them the wrong way around. Not that that's a big difference, but yeah. The D30 122mm. It is comparable to the IS Tier 7 gun in all regards except for one, rate of fire. This has a higher rate of fire and is in fact the second highest rate of fire, I believe? Yes, of the tier 8 premiums. So it's got a higher rate of fire, 122, but it's practically the same gun you get on the KV-1S, the IS, and all them. Stock gun and the IS-3 for that matter. So the gun is garbage and pretty much requires you to use gold, although it does get premium matchmaking, so often it is still the top tier. But anything above it, really, even comparable tier 8s, it has a hard time killing. The 112, same problem with the gun, is pretty much the same. Low rate of fire though, more akin to the standard 122s at 4.55. Same stats, except for one difference. The 112 is the only one of the premiums that gets high explosive anti-tank shells. So where the IS-6 only gets 217 pen, this gets a whopping 250 penetration, which is almost about as good as the T-34 with standard ammo, so there's that. So these two are, gun-wise, the weakest, by far. I mean, they're very inaccurate, long aim times. These are both designed to get in close and personal. Now, as I said, the 112 has slightly lower, well, it has 120 horsepower less, but it weighs 5 tons less, sorry. So, I mean, there is a trade-off there. I don't know if the exact numbers, but I imagine they're pretty close mobility-wise. They have, again, pretty much the same hit points, 1500 average for the tier. Hull armor on the 112 is good from what I understand. I haven't actually... You don't see them very often, so I can't say too much, but 120, 80, 80 is not bad. And the sloping looks pretty decent from what I've seen, so... The turret armor is more akin to Russian and Chinese turrets than the IS-6 at 241, 30, 60. And 380 view range, 600 signal range. It's, again, one of the lower in the bunch. So, just to sum these two tanks up, where they are very similar, the IS-6 probably has one of the better armor of the Tier 8 premiums. They both have the shittiest guns, in my opinion, because of the penetration makes them so much harder to use. The IS-6, again, better armor, lower view range and all, similar mobility stats. So, really, these two are, for the most part, interchangeable, but I would say the IS-6 is probably the better of the two. Just because, well, depends on what you're driving, I suppose, because, remember, premium tanks can be used to grind crews as well, because they do not require special crew. So if you have, say, an IS-3 you want to grind the crew on, you can just use an IS-6. So yeah, that's pretty much those two summed up. Good, decent armor, decent mobility, weak, high punchy guns. I mean, that when they penetrate, they hurt. But it's so hard to penetrate. The I-112 has the better gun because of heat, and that's really about it. And that's pretty much all the tanks looked at. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you found this informative. Please remember to like, favorite, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.